Now, without further ado, let me introduce our keynote speaker. Jeff Johnson is the State Director for AARP Florida. As State Director, Jeff leads a team of staff and volunteers across the state to fight for and equip Floridians age 50 and up to choose how they live as they age by advocating at the local, state, and federal levels on issues of health and financial security and making communities more livable for all ages. A lifelong Floridian, originally from Jacksonville, Jeff has worked at AARP since 2000 and served as State Director since 2010. He and his family live in St. Petersburg. So a warm welcome to another Jeff, which I guess now we can call Jeff 4. Jeff, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. And while I'm coming from St. Petersburg, I do feel like this is my tribe, if only because half of you are named Jeff. So thanks for the opportunity to join you today. I feel like it was one of the last places I got to go before, kind of in the before times, as I tend to refer to the pandemic, was coming to the launch of Indian River County's Age Friendly Initiative. So it's great to be able to be back, even if only virtually. I look forward to getting back over to your side of the state as soon as I can. So want to talk a little bit today about where things are in terms of livable communities and the Age Friendly Network, not just here in Indian River County, but across the state. I've got a PowerPoint. I'm sorry to do that to you at this early hour, but it does beat looking at my face, I have to say. So if we can go ahead and put the PowerPoint up, then I can start my presentation. And as folks said earlier, we do want to use that chat function. So if you have questions as we go, please feel free to put questions or comments into the chat. Here we go. And we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. I wanted to just pull this out, and this is from data that you all have that just really struck me from a kind of a statewide perspective. When you look at Indian River County, it is really remarkable to see the way the ages of your population split out. And I think what I'll call out is that statewide, it has been notable. It's been something that a lot of people nationally have talked about, that we are about even between the population over 65 and over, and the population of children and youth. You know, Florida, as I suspect you all know, is this rare state that is one of the oldest states in the country and yet is continuing to grow across the age spectrum. What's remarkable about Indian River County that I just want to call out, and that I think is probably a good validation of your decision to try to become a more age-friendly community, a better place for all ages to live and work together, is that you're not even between the 65 plus and the under 18. It's about 2 to 1 people over the age of 65 versus folks under the age of 18. And that is remarkable. While not unique in the state, it is remarkable. And I think it underscores, again, the value of this work, and so appreciate the United Way of Indian River County playing a key role in this. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. People probably know AARP for a lot of different things, not the least of which that we start badgering you as soon as you get close to 50 about joining. But a lot of people don't know about our work on livable communities and making communities stronger. And I think that's in part because it's relatively new work. I mean, we've been known for what we do for advocacy. We've been known at the federal and the state level, and we've been known for what we do just to provide members with good information and benefits and services. The livable community work really came out over the last decade or so as we explored what are the wants and needs of the 50 plus population across the country are. And one of the things that really came clear is that people want to have a community that they can live in their entire life. Now, I will say, as a Floridian, if 8 of 10 adults age 50 and over plan to stay where they are for the rest of their years, the other 2 in 10 seem to be coming our way because we continue to attract new retirees and older Floridians, which is wonderful. But I think it underscores for those of us who already beat them here how important it is that we make sure that our community is one that works for all ages, for young and for old. And so that is really the cornerstone of the livable community work that we do. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide, because one of the things that we've discovered is that when you ask older people and younger people, what they want in a community, they tend to be a lot of the same things. So there are things like having well-maintained, safe, accessible streets, that it's easy to get around, that there are things like grocery stores and really good healthcare facilities that are easy to get to, that there are great public spaces like parks where people can go spend time together. These are things that resonate just as strongly among folks who are at the beginning of their adult lives as they do among those who have lived long lives. And so this is a good place for us to be as an organization, and I think a good place for you as a community to be thinking about, how do we make Indian River County an even better place for people of all ages? Next slide. So AARP and the World Health Organization have worked together on an age-friendly framework that includes 8 different domains of livability. Sorry for small print at this hour, but I can run through these for you. So when you think about what makes a community a great place to live, you think in terms of a couple of different things. So there are physical things, there's the built environment, and if you look at the top, you'll see housing and outdoor spaces and transportation as that built environment that is easy to get around and easy to stay engaged in a community. There's also a really significant social component to it. So we talk about social participation. Are there fun things to do for people of all ages? Are there opportunities to continue to give back and volunteer, which of course United Way has been such a champion of for the 60 years and beyond? And is there respect for different generations to work together and live together? I think that there are some parts of the state where you will show up at a new restaurant opening or a new event, and you'll only see people from one generation who feel welcome there. And I think that there are more parts of our state, and increasingly so, where that's not the case, where the things that are really neat, really valuable, really exciting in a community are ones that are open from the very young to the very old. And I think that that's really valuable. So you'll also see health services are obviously really important part of making a community livable. And then one of the things when we started down this work a dozen years ago, I really questioned how important it would be here in the US was communication and information. I thought about other parts of the world that might not have the internet or might not have, the level of communication that we have. The reality is it is incredibly important, and often communities will identify it as the thing they need to work on the most, because while we are deluged with information at any given moment, we often have trouble sorting through what is it that we actually need to know, and when we need help or when we are looking for a particular opportunity, how best to find it. I'll also flag, as we have gone through this work with communities in Florida and in other parts of the country, that we've seen communities decide that these 8 domains, while very good, need some additional tweaking to reflect the local environment, which I think is a wonderful way to continue to make this framework really work for a community. And so some have talked about emergency preparedness and resilience, some have talked about elder abuse, some have talked about public safety, some have talked about focusing specifically on different components of the community that they want to pull out, like becoming a dementia-friendly community. All of those are great additions to this process. The idea of this framework is to work for the community. And you can go to the next slide. We have quite a few communities here in Florida. So there are 43, as of earlier this week, cities and counties in Florida who have joined the age-friendly network. And we're proud to say the state of Florida became just the 4th state in the country to sign on at the state level. So when you think about the Florida Department of Elder Affairs, sure, but Department of Transportation, Department of Health, those state agencies are also thinking about, how do we become a better community and a better state for people of all ages? I'll also note that 43 is a lot here in Florida, but it's a drop in the bucket nationally. There are 577, the last I checked, communities that are a part of this age-friendly network. And the value of the network is the network. The value of this work is to be able to learn from what other communities are going through, what other communities are trying out, and what successes they've found, so that you can build off of their work, just as you can contribute to other communities the great lessons that you've learned here in Indian River County. We'll go on to the next slide. So there are a lot of programs and initiatives and achievements where the process is a community does a lot of work to get a certificate. Somebody comes and presents them a plaque, it goes on a wall, and then that's it. And this is the opposite of that. We have tried to make it relatively easy to join this age-friendly network. It is not a certification like a LEED certification, for instance, that you have already achieved a certain level of age friendliness or livability. It is really just a commitment for a community that this is important to you and you want to get better at it. And so what happens once you join the network is you begin the process. So this is not the end of a long process. It's very much the beginning. And so we begin by listening. And I think that any good social change effort should start by and must start to be successful by listening to the needs and the wants and the desires of the particular community in which you're working. And then just out of that to build whatever the action plans are, whatever the goals are. And so you'll see this 5-year framework, which communities are beginning to cycle through. Some of the early adopters are already re-upping for their second 5-year framework, but basically where you begin by listening, you develop an action plan out of what you have heard, you implement it, and then you check and see what worked. It's pretty simple, but it makes some sense. One of the things that I really want to call out, and our lead at AARP Florida on Livable Communities wanted to make particularly clear, was that this community, above really any other in the state, has knocked it out of the park when it comes to that first step of conducting the survey and listening session. And I need to call out the Treasure Coast Community Health Services, because you all had the great concept of doing the survey for folks who were waiting for vaccines, which obviously was a lot of us. And as a result, you've had more than 1,300 who filled out surveys while they were waiting for vaccine shots, and almost 2,000 across the community who filled out the survey. And that is a great place to start, because it gives you some really good intel about what people are thinking about as the strengths and opportunities in this particular community. So congratulations on that. And I know that that survey work hasn't been released yet, and I think you all are probably still going through the process. When you get 2,000 surveys, it's going to take a little time to weed through it all. But I have a sense that some of the things, just based on the other things that I've seen about Indian River County that are likely to come up, are around things like housing and healthcare and isolation and that communication domain I mentioned earlier. If you go to the next slide, this next graphic is not about Indian River County per se. One of the things that AARP Florida has been doing with this age-friendly network is to convene folks, and just like this, frankly, because of where we are in the world and in the pandemic, we've been doing a lot of Zoom webinars. And in the process, we've been asking the communities, those 43, what are the things then your community that have been surfacing as things that you want to do better? What you'll see, and I think what should be encouraging, is that there's a really broad range of things here. It was funny, we also have a slide, which I'm not using today, on what are the things that they love about their community. And there's a football icon, which, given the state of Florida's football teams right now, I'm a little concerned about. But on the things that we can do better, you'll see that some of the things that you've likely gonna see come out of your survey are things that other communities are also working on. And again, I think that that gives us an opportunity to really leverage the strength of the network to learn from each other. If you go on to the next slide, I'm just going to show really quickly a couple of examples of what communities who have already been a part of this network are doing to try to address the things that have come out of their surveys. So this is a shot of a park in Pensacola called Harmony Park. And so in Pensacola, one of the efforts that they really wanted to do was to upgrade the nature of the intergenerational use of parks. And one of their proposals to do this was to install musical instruments that the young and old could come together and have fun with. And they have found, and you'll see that there's benches over there too, so that it's an easy place for people to sit and enjoy as well as to participate. What they found is that it has been a great way for them to activate their parks, their public spaces, in a way that draws people who are not just kids going to the swing sets and their parents, but people of all ages. And if you go on to the next slide, you'll see a couple of other examples from around the state. So the upper left is a fitness center that actually was part of an AARP national initiative that is, again, an opportunity for people to have access to gym-like equipment outdoors, which certainly during the pandemic has been welcome and has been one that has been used by young and old. You've seen in some parts of the state where transportation is a major initiative that they've done a concentrated effort to install more places to sit for people who are waiting for the bus. That soccer ball over there is actually a bike rack and bike station, and you'll see that there have been a lot of communities across the state in rural and urban alike who have really emphasized how we make our ways of getting around ones that people on a bicycle or people walking are every bit as comfortable and safe as those who are in cars. And then down below, there's a community garden. And then there are a couple of places that have closed off streets in a concept called open streets, not as a permanent thing, but just as an activation so that people can get out, again, of all ages, and enjoy the community from a different perspective, rather than being from behind the wheel of a car, being on a bicycle or just walking through what is normally a heavily trafficked area. And in doing so, they've discovered a lot of new facets of their community that they perhaps hadn't encountered before. Next slide, because I want to talk a little bit about how you begin this work. Again, you're just wrapping up that first step of listening, and I just want to make it really clear for you all at the United Way, as well as for Indian River County more broadly, that there is no one right way to implement an age-friendly community plan, that there are a lot of different ways to do this, and it really revolves around what the group of stakeholders are that you have coming to the table, what are the opportunities that you see. And I just want to call out these four. St. Petersburg, one of our earlier ones, was really intentional about developing a broad set of stakeholders who they listened to not only with surveys, but with face-to-face listening sessions. Obviously a little harder right now, but not impossible. And hopefully the day will come when we get to see each other in person a little more frequently. Also want to target Miami-Dade. Frankly, Miami-Dade has been the community of the ones who have been in the network for a while, who have been the best at engaging their United Way. And so I think you should know that there are other United Ways out there who have played leadership roles in this age-friendly, livable communities approach. Walton County, that third one over, actually made it part of their health improvement plan. So it's really their Department of Health that has been a leader in this, and they've thought about aging gracefully, about livable communities as a health initiative, which is a really fascinating way to approach it. And then in Cape Canaveral, it is actually part of their resilience plan. It is something that they've done as part of their efforts to address the changes in our climate, that they have thought about how do we do that in a way that is age friendly. And what I would say as kind of the takeaway from this is that my hope is, and I think our experience is, that age friendly is not its own initiative that lives by itself and is just one more among a lot of different things that a county or a community are taking on. It is really a mindset that can be brought to bear on anything that you're already doing, to think about, okay, as we implement this plan, whatever this plan is, or as we take on this strategy, whatever it is, how are we thinking about how this appeals not only to the middle half of our population who are not children and not elders? How do we make sure that it is one that also appeals for the very young and the very old? There is an organization out there called 880 Cities, and their principle, which I think has a lot of value, is that if you can develop a community that works for the 8-year-old and works for the 80-year-old, then everybody else is going to benefit too. And I think that that comprehensive approach of bringing an age lens to all of the work you do is helpful. Next slide, speaking of help. So we at AARP have pulled together a fair amount of resources for communities that are in this process. This is just a sample. Our website, aarp.org/livable, has just reams of different opportunities that you can learn from, great examples from other parts of the country, or learn just from experts in the field. And so you'll see that there's a lot on housing here, whether it's around accessory dwelling units or model codes, or just ways to help encourage individuals to think about other ways to think about housing. But you'll also see plenty on retrofitting your own home, or on making public spaces better, or making transportation better. Really, we've tried to develop resources that work for any of those domains that are out there. And again, I would layer that on top of the learning that happens within the network of communities directly from each other. I'm going to hope that if there is anybody with questions, that they'll go ahead and put them in the mix, because I'm getting near the end of the time. But I did want to just say that this is, as I mentioned before, very much the beginning of a process that we hope will engage you all in an ongoing way. You can go ahead and go on to the next slide, which just has our information. So that website is arp.org/livable. We have a free e-newsletter that goes out every week that highlights different stories about examples of livability that are happening in different parts of the country, as well as the latest resources, research, events, all sorts of activities related to livability that you're welcome to subscribe to. And of course, we here in Florida are very much family as far as I'm concerned. Even if I weren't named Jeff, I would say that. And I think that we want to continue this relationship. Laura Cantwell on my team has been working directly with Abby Walters, who I saw was here today. Great to see my dear friend Abby, at least on a screen list of participants. And we have that relationship to begin with. But I do hope, regardless of where you are in your organization, where you are in Indian River County, that if there is a way for us to work together, that you will feel free to reach out for us so we can do that. What I'm seeing in the chat is currently that there's not a lot of questions, but I'm going to cheat and put on glasses. There is, and thank you to Jeff Pickering for raising this, because his comment, for those who also need glasses that they don't have on right now, is that Indian River is a relatively small area, or small community compared to the Miami-Dades of the world. Absolutely. So yes, we do actually have a whole suite of resources to help rural communities and smaller communities think through what this looks like, what age-friendly means in a smaller area. We're excited that in Florida, there are communities like Walton County and places like Winter Haven that have been part of the age-friendly network for a while now. And I think it is something that as an organization, we recognize that it can be too easy to focus on what happens in a big metro area. And that is unfortunate for a state like ours, where so many people live in communities that look a lot different. And so thank you very much for raising that, Jeff. And certainly on that arp.org/livable site, there's a good bit of information that's specific to smaller communities, but feel free to reach out as well, again, if there are other things. So there's a great comment from Vicky about affordable housing. It's interesting, and kind of to go to Jeff's point, it doesn't matter what part of the state you're in, quite candidly. It doesn't matter if it's a big city or a smaller community. Affordable housing ends up being one that comes to the surface a lot. And unfortunately, it is one of the tougher nuts to crack, I have to say. So it's something that at the putting on the other parts of the ARP hat at the federal and state level, we continue to advocate for more funding for affordable housing. But one of the things that we have seen a lot of local communities use the resources that we have on that Livable site to develop is how are ways that we can encourage people to make the most of the housing that they have. And so you've heard of perhaps granny flats or in-law suites, accessory dwelling units. There are some communities that allow those and some communities that don't. For those who are thinking about whether that is a way that they can help augment not only the opportunities, the range of housing that's available, but also in some ways support the financial security of their residents who may be able to rent out an accessory dwelling unit. There's a lot of resources on the Livable website. We've also seen some communities that have actually used some of the AARP Livable resources as input as they start to think about how they can build multifamily affordable housing. It is not an easy solution because the needs are so great, but gosh, it is one that I think you'll see there's probably more about housing, especially from both affordability and accessibility on our website than anything else. So thank you for raising that. Let's see, I see Abby, an important feature in the action plan is meant to be flexible. Yes, that is right. So I think it is like just really, really important for you all to know that that template, the 8 domains that I had on one of the early slides, is a starting point. What you learn from your community, frankly, should be what drives your action plan. My suspicion in our experience, based on the 43, 42 others in Florida and 577 nationally, is that you'll find that probably 90% of what you hear from your community falls into those different domains. And if the other 10, 20% other things that arise are things that you as a group determine are really important, I think that you need to feel free to develop that as a separate part of an age-friendly plan. I think that the underlying goal is really to help communities through this framework process of listening to what the needs of their community are and developing a plan that works for them. We often, especially early on, before you could see how different communities have done this, had concerns from people who said, geez, we do not have the capacity to take on 8 different domains, 8 different projects. We know our community really cares about this one. Might be transportation, might be housing, might be something completely different. Great, that's fantastic. That is an excellent use of this framework to understand your community and where you can do the most good. And I think that that is the other thing you have to obviously think through, is both what are the needs and wants of your community, and what do you all as this committed group of stakeholders have capacity to take on and make a difference on. So thank you for that point, Abby. And I do hope to encourage you as you go through that process of developing an action plan, that you draw on the resources we have, but you also consider together how best you can make this community an even better place for people of all ages. Things have slowed down a little bit in the chat, and so I am delighted to work with you all as we go forward. Ooh, one last. Let's see, we have one of the highest percentages in the state of low-income senior women who live alone. Any specific innovations that you've seen in the state or country to help serve this specific population? Wow, that's a fantastic question, Jeff, that I don't have a full answer for, but I can mention a couple of things. So one of the things that we've seen is, especially here in Florida, and people may retire here from somewhere else and they lose a spouse, we've had a lot of parts of the state where you have a pretty high incidence of women who are living on Social Security check alone, or on a very small pension and savings, and how they make do. I think that that is, frankly, one of the biggest drivers that I've heard here in the state around the affordable housing crisis. While we certainly need to think about all generations of affordable housing, I do think that that particular population is challenged. And I think that we have to think through what are the ways that we can help. I have seen parts of the state where they have experimented with things like helping people develop home shares, sort of like the Airbnb model, but more for an intentional long-term roommate who helps provide companionship as well as subsidize the cost of housing and contribute to the financial well-being. I again will mention that we've seen in some parts of the state where people have used the in-law suite, or the garage apartment, or whatever the case may be, as a way to kind of build another stream of income, which can be very hard, obviously, especially depending on each community's setup. And I also think that there's unavoidably a challenge for those who are low-income senior women who are renters, who don't own their own home and therefore don't have that same flexibility. I wish I had a silver bullet on that one. We do not, but it is a really good point, and one that I hope that you'll consider working on. And otherwise, it seems like people are saying nice things, which is usually my cue to be quiet and let somebody else go. I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I know that we're getting close to the time that I have anyway. Again, I look forward to the fact that I can be there and be in person, and I know that many of you are in that same place of looking forward to that. But at this point, I just want to say thank you so much for taking on this really critical challenge of what it means to be age-friendly Indian River County, and look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you, AARP, for bringing this great initiative to our state and to our community. So I am not a Jeff. I am Meredith Egan. I'm the CEO of United Way of Indian River County. Thank you again to Florida Power and Light as our sponsor. Thank you to our board of directors, and most of all to our dedicated and talented staff. I think when we decided to do a virtual event, we thought that it was going to be a little easier. I mean, I kind of long for the days that we're worrying about what the food's going to be and if the napkins are going to match the centerpieces. This morning, all we've been worried about is if the internet is going to hold up. So we're very happy that so far, no technology glitches. I'm really pleased that we could bring this topic to you and talk about this very important community initiative. Here locally, we have known our community is aging faster than that of the state and many other places in the country. But finding solutions has always been a challenge. In 2016, we began building the backbone for an organization that is now known as the Senior Collaborative of Indian River County. Helping to incubate and foster this idea from a vision to a thriving organization is a shining example of our often unseen and unexplainable community engagement effort. The Senior Collaborative is the lead agency on what you've just heard about, the Livable Community Initiative. Here in Indian River, they are early on in that 5-year process to identify more of what residents need and want now and in the future. We know that this is an amazing place to live, and we already have wonderful livable features here. But like anything, it can be improved upon. When you think about the goals of our local Livable initiative, it's not far off from our United Way work, and that's why we thought this was a great topic for this morning. Livable wants a community that is safe and secure and offers supportive features and services that provide for job opportunities, protect our quality of life and our environment, and enable a variety of housing and mobility choices. They ensure access to healthcare and recreation in order to enhance the quality of life for residents and visitors. As Jeff explained, a major demographic shift is taking place, with the number of over 55 residents here expected to be over 90,000 in Indian River by the year 2045. Indian River County currently ranks as the 6th oldest county nationally. These changes are going to have significant implications for how we live, work, and play. Community leaders like you are facing and making critical decisions for how to move forward and prepare. Identifying ways to promote active, engaged, healthy living opportunities for people of all ages, and weighing the social and economic benefits associated with those decisions. By the time COVID-19 struck, an estimated 10,000 baby boomers in the United States were retiring every day. Since then, that trend has only accelerated to about 1.1 million more baby boomers who have retired due to the economic effects of the pandemic. In the third quarter of 2020, 28.6 million people had retired, and about 900 people moved to our state every single day. Over half of those are over the age of 60. As people live longer and healthier lives, they are contributing to our communities and fueling the economic growth well past the traditional retirement age. The contributions of people 50 plus benefit society and our neighbors of all ages, as the growing number of older adults work, pay taxes, support the job market, give time and money to charitable causes, and provide caregiving support to family and friends. Not only do older adults hold the demographic majority, they also make significant contributions to the community in more ways than one. But obviously, there are challenges in promoting the health and well-being of this growing and increasingly diverse population. Livability is all about community, and our community includes people of all ages. While age-friendly communities do try to target the areas of concern for older adults, their concerns often include other generations. Take the issue of isolation that was just talked about. For decades, we've been concerned about the isolation of seniors, but the experiences we have all had through this pandemic have made isolation an issue that affects everyone. The same goes for the other United Way focus areas of education, financial stability, and health. They are underscored by ALICE. And if you don't know ALICE, that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. The ALICE population are households with incomes above the federal poverty line, but struggle to afford the basic household necessities in our community. ALICE is your favorite waitress at a local beachside restaurant, the front desk receptionist who answers your calls, or the mechanic who changed your oil. ALICE keeps us healthy and helps make our quality of life possible. ALICE is what makes living in Indian River such a desirable place. Alice is a significant part of and plays a significant role in the quality of life of our community. When Alice struggles, our entire community struggles. That is why we work hard for everyone to ensure a quality education that leads to a stable job, enough income to support a family through retirement, and good health through old age. In our 617 square mile community, we are all connected and interdependent. We all win when a child succeeds in school, when families are financially stable, and when those families are independent, when families are healthy, and when seniors thrive and age in place. The growing and aging population will increase the demand for all sorts of services, including caregiving, hospitality, personal care, healthcare, construction, housing, and so on. The problem is that these needs will clash with the projected shortage of paid and unpaid caregivers, often Alice themselves. The lack of training among those caregivers and the financial and emotional burden of caregiving on family members. Our common agenda and mutually reinforcing activities focus our efforts on the interconnected areas of health, education, and financial stability. United Way's shared measurement system and our focus on results-based accountability measures progress towards making real change in our community. The partner agencies, the backbone support organizations, and the special initiatives we support all work to serve our neighbors. Let's face it, 2020 was tough. 2020 is only slightly easier. For all of us, for our friends, family members, coworkers, neighbors who have faced illness, increased stress and worry, reduced hours or unemployment, who have struggled to pay rent and put food on the table. United, we forged solutions that improve lives and strengthened our community. We know that because of the compounding issues facing our community throughout these 18 months, there have been damaging effects on both the physical health and emotional health for adults, as well as for our youngest residents. Students have been challenged to stay engaged in school while simultaneously dealing with situations at home, pulling their focus away from their education. Not only was this a difficult time for individuals and families in our community, but for our partnering nonprofits as well. They were tasked with meeting exponentially greater needs while experiencing shortfalls in funding and revenues. As much as the challenges of this past year were a hallmark, so was our resilience and our drive to continue to hold one another up. United, we rallied the caring power of our community around the building blocks of a prosperous life: education, financial stability, and health. As always, it's the partnerships across this community that make this work successful. Nonprofit agencies, local businesses, government, and leaders like you who are working together for the common good. And it's that continued partnership that gives us hope that we will emerge from this difficult time to reimagine and rebuild our community in a way that provides a pathway for success for all. The pandemic represented one of the many ways in which catastrophes can disrupt systems we didn't even know were fragile. Fractured and alone, we might very well have experienced a far worse time than we did. Thankfully, we didn't stay apart. We rolled up our sleeves and we banded together. Among the ways in which we came together, the caring power of our neighbors was most evident. Imagine being in that room in 1961, creating a vision for United Way of Indian River with a population of 25,000. I think those 30 community leaders who sat around that table knew they were forming something special, but the impact and growth that we have had along the way far surpassed their dreams. Take this moment in time, our first virtual breakfast with over 200 of our most influential leaders gathered around the county. Our population stands at 154,000. What goals can we set for the future? Where will our work take us? What problems can we solve together? Imagine what the community leaders breakfast conversation will be in 2081. Grateful is an understatement for what we feel for those who contributed to our cause. Those of us who could, did. And for those of us who needed help, maybe for the first time, help was there. That's what it means to come together. Let's continue with more of what we do best: partner, engage, hold one another up, stay united. On behalf of all of the individuals and families who receive services from a United Way funded partner, thank you. However you are connected to United Way of Indian River County, whether you are a donor, a volunteer, a staff member at a partner agency, you are making concrete differences in the lives of so many in our community.